The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council headquarters sparkled under the light of Alpha Centauri's twin suns. Inside, representatives from over 200 species gathered in tiered seating, their voices a low murmur as they waited for the emergency session to begin. Ethan Collins adjusted his formal diplomatic uniform and took a deep breath. After 80 years of humanity being treated as the newcomers, today might be the day everything changed. "Are you certain about this?" Lisa Warren whispered beside him. Her normally confident face showed rare concern. "Once we present this evidence, there's no going back." Ethan nodded slowly. "For 80 years we've played by their rules. We've been patient, respectful. And what has it gotten us? They still treat us like children who don't deserve a real voice." The council leader, Zaxathul of the Zorlai Imperium, raised his 4 upper limbs for silence. His scaled skin reflected blue light across the chamber as he began the session with traditional formalities. Ethan barely listened to the opening statements. His mind was on the data chip in his pocket and on Captain Olivia Martinez, who waited nervously in the witness area. "We now recognize Earth's delegation for their emergency petition," Zaxathul finally announced, his voice carrying a hint of annoyance. "Though we remind our youngest members that emergency sessions are for genuine crises, not human concerns." Several delegates chuckled. Ethan stepped forward to the central platform, which rose slightly to give him visibility to all council members. "Esteemed delegates of the Galactic Council," he began, his voice strong despite his racing heart. "Earth brings before you evidence of direct violations of Statute 17, the Protection of Developing Worlds Act, specifically, unauthorized resource extraction and ecological damage on Proxima Centauri 4. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Zorlai representative flicked his tail in irritation. "We call forward Captain Olivia Martinez of the Earth Defense Fleet, who documented these violations during her patrol of the system last month." Olivia walked to the platform, her steps measured and careful. At 38, she was relatively young for a starship captain, but her record was impeccable. She had specifically requested the Proxima Centauri patrol after hearing rumors from traders about strange activities there. "Council members, what I found in the Proxima system was shocking," she began, activating the holographic display. "These images show Zorlai mining ships extracting nequadium from the northern continent of Proxima Centauri 4. As you can see from the timestamps, operations have been ongoing for at least 7 months. The images floated above the chamber. Crystal-clear footage showed massive ships bearing the distinctive crest of the Zorlai Imperium's mining guild. Below them, forested areas had been reduced to barren craters. The indigenous population, while pre-spaceflight, has developed agriculture and early industrial technology. Their civilization is directly threatened by this operation. Water sources have been contaminated with mining waste, causing illness in 3 major population centers. The Zorlai Council leader interrupted. "These operations were authorized under Section 5, Paragraph 3 of the Resource Allocation Agreement. The Zorlai Imperium claimed extraction rights to this system 3 decades ago." "That's false." Lisa Warren stood beside Ethan now. "Earth was granted stewardship of the Proxima Centauri system upon our admission to the Council. We have all documentation here, with Council seals." Olivia continued, her voice growing harder. "When my ship approached the mining operation, we were fired upon without warning. We did not return fire, but captured this communication between the mining ships." The audio played clearly through the chamber. "Destroy any evidence. The humans don't matter. Zaxathul himself approved this operation. The Council will never side with them over us." Silence fell over the chamber. Ethan looked directly at Zaxathul, whose inner eyelids were now blinking rapidly in what humans had learned was a sign of Zorlai distress. "This is clearly fabricated," the Zorlai leader finally sputtered. "Human technology is well known for its capacity to create false records. The data has been verified by 3 independent sources, including your allies, the Drasan Confederation," Ethan replied calmly. "But your reaction tells me everything we need to know." The Ardani representative, a tall willowy being named Salori, rose from her seat. "I move that we open a formal investigation into these allegations. If true, This represents a serious breach of council law. Seconded, called the Tellurian ambassador. Zax Thul's scales darkened with anger. There will be no investigation. This matter falls under Zorlai internal security protocols. People are dying, Olivia said, her voice cutting through the growing argument. While we debate, the forests that provide oxygen for an entire continent are being destroyed. 3 villages have already been evacuated due to water poisoning. This is typical human emotional interference, Zax Thul sneered. This species, on Proxima Centauri to 4, will adapt or perish as is natural. The Council has never let the concerns of pre-spaceflight species interfere with necessary resource acquisition. Ethan felt something break inside him, the final thread of hope that the Council could be reformed from within. He exchanged a look with Lisa, who gave him a small nod. Then the Council has failed its most basic moral obligation, Ethan said quietly. Humanity joined this body because we believed in its stated principles: cooperation, respect for life, and protection of developing worlds. What we found instead was corruption, exploitation, and colonialism dressed in diplomatic language. He stepped forward, his voice growing stronger. For 80 years we have tried to work within this system. We have followed your rules, accepted your limitations, and hoped to gradually bring change. Today proves what many on Earth have long suspected. This council exists to maintain power for the elder races, not to create a just galaxy. Gasps echoed through the chamber. No species had ever spoken this way in the council hall. Earth will no longer participate in this charade, Ethan continued. As of this moment, by the authority granted to me by President Paul Harris and the United Earth Government, I formally withdraw humanity from the Galactic Council and sever all diplomatic ties. The chamber exploded in shouting and chaos. Zax Thul was screaming something about consequences. The Ardani representative was on her feet, looking shocked but also somewhat impressed. Ethan turned to Olivia and Lisa. We're leaving. Now. As they walked toward the exit, guards moved to block their path. Let them go, came a deep voice from the upper tier. It was Ambassador Kralvex of the Vorga hegemony, one of the eldest council members. They have invoked the right of separation. It is their legal choice to depart. Reluctantly, the guards stepped aside. The human delegation walked out of the crystal halls with straight backs and steady steps. Only when they reached their ship did Ethan allow his hands to shake. What happens now? Olivia asked quietly as the council headquarters diminished through the viewport. Now we prepare, Lisa said. The council won't let this stand without a response. Ethan looked out at the stars. For better or worse, humanity is on its own. But maybe that's what we needed all along, to stop playing by their rules and start making our own. As their ship broke orbit and set course for Earth, none of them could imagine how this single act of defiance would reshape the galaxy in the decades to come. The first domino had fallen. The Galactic Council had just started, its long, inevitable collapse. 5 years had passed since humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council. Earth's skies now bristled with defense platforms, sleek and silent sentinels against the stars. The quarantine zone established by the Council surrounded human space, like an invisible wall, cutting off official trade and communication. Dr. Alan Peterson stood at the window of his laboratory on Luna Base, watching Earth rise over the cratered horizon. At 57, his hair had gone completely gray in the years since the separation, but his eyes remained sharp and determined. The latest test results are in, Dr. Maya Johnson said as she entered the lab. Her dark skin contrasted with her white lab coat as she handed him a data pad. Though only 34, she had become the leading expert in quantum communication technology. The QEC network bypassed all council monitoring systems. They didn't detect a single transmission. Alan smiled, the first genuine smile in weeks. So we can talk to our colonies without the council listening in? Better than that, Maya replied, a hint of pride in her voice. We can communicate instantly across any distance with no possibility of interception. The council's monitoring technology still relies on detecting variations in subspace. Our system doesn't use subspace at all. This was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. The Separation Initiative, as Alan's project had been named, focused on achieving complete self-sufficiency for humanity. Communication had been their biggest challenge. "We should inform Admiral Carter immediately," Alan said, already moving toward the secure conference room. 30 minutes later, they sat across from William Carter, the imposing head of Earth's defense forces. At 63, the Admiral's face was weathered from decades of service, but his mind remained razor-sharp. "So they can't hear us anymore," Carter mused, studying the technical specifications. "And you're certain this is secure?" "Absolutely," Maya confirmed. "The quantum entanglement pairs create a connection that exists outside normal space-time. There's nothing to intercept." Carter nodded slowly. "This changes everything. We can coordinate with all our colonies without the Council knowing. I want this technology deployed to every human settlement within 3 months." The Admiral turned to the large display showing the network of automated defense platforms surrounding Earth and its colonies. The Carter Doctrine, as it had been dubbed by the media, was based on a simple principle. Humanity wouldn't start a fight, but they would finish one decisively if provoked. "Any news from the border?" Alan asked. Carter's expression darkened. "The Zorlai have been testing our perimeter. Nothing direct, just pushing to see how we respond. Last week, one of their scientific vessels strayed into our space near Tau Ceti." "What happened?" Maya asked. "One of our automated platforms disabled its engines and communications. Clean and precise. No casualties." A small smile crossed Carter's face. The look on their faces when our retrieval team boarded them was apparently quite something. On the distant colony world of Tau Ceti III, Governor Diane Russell walked through fields of golden wheat that hadn't existed 6 months ago. The planet had been considered marginally habitable when humans first settled it, but now it was blooming. "The new terraforming process is working better than we projected," her assistant reported, struggling to keep up with her brisk pace. "At this rate, we'll have the entire northern continent ready for settlement within 2 years." Diane nodded with satisfaction. Before the separation, Council regulations had restricted terraforming to painfully slow, ecologically sensitive methods that would have taken centuries to make planets truly habitable. Now freed from those constraints, human innovation had accelerated dramatically. "What about the indigenous plant species?" she asked, stopping to examine a soil sample. "All preserved in the bioreserves as you ordered. We can reintroduce them once the atmospheric balance stabilizes." This was important to Diane. Unlike the Council races who often viewed developing worlds merely as resources to exploit, she insisted that humanity would be better stewards. Environmental preservation zones protected native species even as human settlements expanded. Her comm unit beeped with an urgent message. It was from Earth, sent through the new quantum network. "Governor Russell, we have a situation. Admiral." Carter's voice came through with perfect clarity despite being over 12 light-years away. "Our defense network captured an intact Zorlai surveillance vessel. The data we recovered is concerning." Diane listened as Carter explained. The Zorlai ship contained detailed scans of human colonies and technology. More disturbing were communications, revealing that several Council races had been secretly studying human advancements, particularly in terraforming and defense technology. "They've been watching us for years," Carter concluded. "And not just watching, they've been trying to duplicate our innovations for military applications." After the call ended, Diane stood silently, watching the colony's double sunset. The implications were clear. Despite the quarantine and public disdain, the Council races feared and coveted human ingenuity. This changed the diplomatic equation significantly. Back on Earth, news of the Zorlai surveillance spread quickly. President Nicole Franklin addressed the United Earth Parliament in New Geneva. "This confirms what we have suspected," she said, her voice firm and resolute. "The Galactic Council claims to have quarantined us as punishment, but in reality, they fear our potential. They restrict us publicly while studying us privately." The Parliament erupted in angry shouts. 5 years of isolation had not dampened humanity's spirit, but had instead forged a new kind of unity. "What will our response be, Madam President?" asked the representative from the African Union. We will continue on our current path, Franklin replied. We will build, innovate, and strengthen our position. But now we do so with the knowledge that we are being watched. Let them watch. Let them see what humans can accomplish when freed from their constraints. Throughout human space, the news sparked a fresh wave of determination. On Mars, factories worked around the clock, producing components for the quantum communication network. On Europa, vast underwater laboratories developed new propulsion systems that didn't rely on council-controlled fuel sources. Unknown to humanity, the news had also spread beyond the quarantine zone. The Ardani Collective, who had long been sympathetic to humans, received reports of the Zorlai surveillance mission with growing concern. The council assured us the quarantine was temporary, Ambassador Salori said during an emergency meeting of the Ardani leadership. Yet we now have evidence they are treating humans as a threat to be contained and studied, not as equals to be eventually welcomed back. Across the galaxy, other species began to question the council's policies as well. The elegant Tellurians, the logical Vorga, even the usually passive Drasen, all began private discussions about the human situation. The first major crack in the council's united front appeared 2 weeks later. During a routine council session, the Ardani representative formally protested the surveillance of human space. If we treat member species, former or current, as subjects for espionage rather than as partners, what does that say about our values? Silori asked, her willowy form seeming to grow taller with conviction. Zaxathul dismissed her concerns with a wave of his upper limbs. The humans chose to leave. They are now potential competitors, even threats. The Council has every right to monitor threats. Then perhaps the Council has forgotten its original purpose, Silori replied coolly. Perhaps we have all forgotten. As she returned to her seat, several other representatives nodded in quiet agreement. The seeds of division had been planted. The galaxy watched and waited to see what would grow from them. 10 years had passed since Earth walked away from the Galactic Council. The quarantine zone around human space remained officially in place, but its edges had grown increasingly porous. Unofficial trade flourished through hidden routes and neutral way stations. Some called it smuggling. Others called it freedom. Jack Henderson was one of those who navigated these shadowy borders. His ship, the Wanderer, was small and unremarkable, perfect for slipping past patrol vessels. At 35, Jack had spent nearly half his life in space, the last 7 years running goods between human colonies and the wider galaxy. Approaching Cassiopeia Station, his navigation system announced as the small trading post came into view. Located in a legally ambiguous region between several territorial boundaries, Cassiopeia had become a meeting point for those wishing to bypass council restrictions. Jack docked his ship with practiced ease. He had a cargo hold full of Earth coffee and chocolate, luxury items that commanded high prices among certain council species. In return, he would pick up specialized alloys that Earth's industries still struggled to produce in sufficient quantities. The station's main concourse bustled with activity. Species from across the galaxy mingled, traded, and shared information, away from council oversight. Jack headed toward his usual contact, a Drasen trader named Kelvik, when an emergency alert blared through the station. All vessels be advised. Refugee ships incoming from the Messier cluster. Medical assistance required. This is not a drill. Jack changed direction immediately, heading for the medical bay. Before becoming a trader, he had trained as a paramedic. Those skills were still useful on the frontiers of space. 3 badly damaged ships limped into the station's docking bays. Their hulls bore scorch marks from weapons fire. As the airlock doors opened, the passengers stumbled out, civilians from various species, many injured, all terrified. Jack worked alongside the station's medical staff treating plasma burns and decompression injuries. He helped a young Tellurian mother whose arm had been severely damaged. "What happened out there?" he asked as he applied a regenerative bandage to her wound. "The Vorga and Tellurian forces." She winced in pain. "They're at war. Full-scale attacks on civilian targets. Our colony was caught in the crossfire." Jack's blood ran cold. The Vorga hegemony and Tellurian Empire were two of the most powerful forces in the galaxy. A war between them could engulf dozens of systems and cost billions of lives. "The Council peacekeepers, he began. The woman laughed bitterly. "The Council can't even agree on how to respond. They've been arguing for weeks while our worlds burn." As Jack continued treating patients, he overheard more stories. The conflict had begun as a minor border dispute in the resource-rich Messier cluster. Without a neutral third party to mediate, a role that human diplomats like Ethan Collins had frequently filled, the disagreement escalated rapidly. Now planets were being bombarded, refugee ships attacked, and atrocities committed on both sides. When Jack entered the last refugee ship to check for additional survivors, he found something unexpected: a Vorga diplomat lying unconscious in the command center. The distinctive facial ridges and ceremonial scars identified him as Kralvex, once a senior member of the Vorga delegation to the Council, and someone who had voted against humanity repeatedly in the past. Jack hesitated only briefly before lifting the injured Vorga and carrying him to the medical bay. Despite their history, he couldn't leave anyone to die. Hours later, when Kralvex regained consciousness, he stared at Jack in confusion. "You are human," he said, his universal translator giving his words a mechanical tone. "Last time I checked," Jack replied, checking the Vorga's vital signs. "Why did you help me? Your kind has every reason to let me die." Jack shrugged. "That's not how we operate." Kralvex was silent for a long moment. "Perhaps we misjudged your species." A commotion at the entrance to the medical bay drew their attention. A group of armed Tellurians had entered, scanning the room. "They're looking for me," Kralvex said quietly. "I was traveling to a secret peace negotiation when our ship was attacked. If they find me, they will execute me as a war criminal." Jack made a quick decision. He helped Kralvex to his feet and led him through a service corridor to the docking bay where the Wanderer waited. "I can get you to neutral space," Jack said as they boarded his ship. "After that, you're on your own." The Wanderer slipped away from Cassiopeia Station before the Tellurians realized Kralvex was gone. Jack plotted a course through a debris field that would mask their energy signature. During the 3-day journey to the neutral Ardani system, Kralvex told Jack about the escalating conflict. Without human diplomacy to maintain the delicate balance between rival powers, old tensions had resurged. The Council, paralyzed by internal divisions, had failed to respond effectively. "You're Ethan Collins." He understood the Vorga and Tellurian temperaments, Kralvex admitted. He knew when to push and when to compromise. There is no one with his skill now. On the 3rd day, as they approached Ardani space, they received a disturbing transmission. Footage from the refugee rescue at Cassiopeia Station had somehow been broadcast across galactic networks. The images of Jack and other humans treating wounded aliens from both sides of the conflict stood in stark contrast to scenes of Council in action. "This will change things," Kralvex noted, watching the broadcast. "Many have forgotten what humanity offered to galactic society." When they reached the Ardani border, Jack transferred Kralvex to a diplomatic vessel. Before departing, the Vorga turned to Jack. "When humans left the Council, I celebrated. I thought you were arrogant upstarts who needed to be taught humility." He paused. "I was wrong. The galaxy needs your kind, human Jack Henderson, more than we realized." Back on Earth, President Nicole Franklin watched the same footage with her advisors. Reports from their intelligence network indicated that opinion across the galaxy was shifting. Many ordinary citizens of Council worlds now questioned why humanity remained isolated when their skills were clearly needed. "We have an opportunity," her chief diplomatic advisor suggested. "We could offer to mediate this conflict, use it to negotiate our return to the Council with better terms." Franklin considered this for a long moment before shaking her head. "No, we will not rejoin a broken system, but we can offer an alternative." She composed a message that would be broadcast across all channels, somehow penetrating even the Council's communication barriers. "To all people affected by the conflict in the Messier cluster," she began, her voice calm but firm. Earth offers humanitarian aid without political conditions. We will accept refugees regardless of species or allegiance. We will provide medical ships to assist the wounded on both sides. We will help evacuate civilian populations from combat zones. She paused, letting her next words carry their full weight. But we will not rejoin the Galactic Council. We believe a new approach to interstellar relations is needed. One based on mutual respect and genuine cooperation, rather than hierarchies of power. Any world that shares these values is welcome to establish direct diplomatic relations with Earth, regardless of Council policy. The response came faster than anyone had anticipated. The Ardani Collective, impressed by humanity's stance, formally withdrew from the Council within days. Their announcement cited the moral clarity of Earth's position and the systemic failures of the Council structure. 3 other mid-tier species followed within months, establishing direct treaties with humanity. A new galactic alignment was forming, centered not on the ancient power structures of the Council, but on the principles Earth refused to compromise. On Cassiopeia Station, Jack Henderson watched these developments with interest as he prepared the Wanderer for another run. "Looks like you're becoming a celebrity," his Drayson contact commented, showing him footage that included his rescue of the Vorga diplomat. "The human who saved an enemy." Jack shook his head. "I didn't see an enemy, just another person who needed help." As he departed the station, Jack reflected that this simple idea, helping others regardless of politics, might be humanity's most revolutionary contribution to the galaxy. And as the Council continued to fracture, that idea was spreading, like wildfire across the stars. 20 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The Council now existed in name only, with less than half of its original members remaining. The Grand Crystal Dome on Alpha Centauri, once the proud symbol of galactic unity, now stood mostly empty during sessions. The Zorli Imperium, once the dominant council power, had watched its influence decline year by year. Their leader, Zax Thul, now ancient even by Zorli standards, had grown desperate. Reports from across the galaxy spoke of Zorli warships moving with purpose, targeting former council worlds that had established ties with Earth. On Mars, Professor Daniel White worked in his laboratory at the Mars Research Institute. At 42, his reputation had spread far beyond human space. His creation, adaptive infrastructure, had revolutionized how devastated worlds could be rebuilt. The latest simulations looked promising, he told his team, as they reviewed data from a test site on Ganymede. The system adapted to the radiation storms without any external input. It reconfigured the shield emitters automatically. His assistant gestured toward another screen, showing news from the wider galaxy. "Professor, you should see this." The screen showed footage of a planet with continents scarred by orbital bombardment. The text identified it as Lyra 7th, a former council world that had been caught in the crossfire of the ongoing Vorga-Tellurian conflict. "The planetary government has formally requested Earth's assistance," the news anchor was saying. "This marks the 17th world to seek human aid in rebuilding after council peacekeeping efforts failed to prevent devastation." Daniel frowned. Each request put Earth in a difficult position. Helping these worlds meant risking confrontation with the increasingly aggressive Zorli, who viewed any human expansion of influence as a threat. His comm unit chimed with a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral William Carter's face appeared on the screen, now lined with 20 more years of responsibility. "Professor White, your adaptive infrastructure technology has been approved for deployment to Lyra 7 and 3 other systems," Carter said without preamble. "The humanitarian mission will depart in 48 hours. Daniel was surprised. "Sir, with all respect, the Zorli have threatened to attack any human ships entering those regions." Carter's expression remained calm. "We're aware. That's why my daughter will be leading the mission." Commander Samantha Carter had followed in her father's footsteps, becoming one of Earth's most respected naval officers. At 39, she had never known a galaxy where humans were part of the council, and her outlook reflected the new, more independent human mindset. Aboard her ship, The Horizon. Samantha reviewed the mission parameters with her crew. The Horizon was officially classified as a humanitarian vessel, but its defensive capabilities were substantial, a necessity in the current galactic climate. Our orders are clear, she told her officers. We provide aid to all affected worlds regardless of their past or present allegiances. We defend if attacked, but we do not engage first under any circumstances. The humanitarian fleet, consisting of 5 ships carrying medical personnel, engineers, and Daniel White's adaptive infrastructure components, departed Earth space 2 days later. They traveled through the territories of several former Council races who had established good relations with humanity, receiving escorts at each border crossing. As they approached the former Council capital at Alpha Centauri, now a neutral zone, sensors detected a Zorli battle group moving to intercept them. They're powering weapons, Samantha's tactical officer reported. Attack pattern confirmed. Samantha stood calmly on the bridge. Defensive posture only. Activate shield harmonics as discussed. Open a channel. The face of the Zorli commander appeared on screen, scales flashing with anger. Human vessels, you are violating Zorli protected space. Reverse course immediately or be destroyed. This is Commander Samantha Carter of Earth's humanitarian fleet, she replied evenly. We are on a peaceful mission to provide aid to worlds devastated by conflict. We have valid transit permissions from all territorial authorities in this sector. The Zorli Imperium does not recognize those authorities. The commander snarled. This is your final warning. The Zorli ships fired, without waiting for a response. Energy weapons blazed across space toward the human vessels. But instead of exploding against the Horizon's shields, the energy seemed to disappear entirely. Samantha allowed herself a small smile. As you can see, Commander, your weapons have no effect on our defensive systems. We have no desire for conflict. Let us pass and we can all continue our separate missions. The Zorli fired again with the same result. Each energy blast was absorbed completely by the human ship's shields, which glowed briefly but showed no signs of weakening. Impossible, the Zorli commander exclaimed. No shield technology can absorb directed energy so completely. 20 years of independent development has led to many advancements, Samantha replied. Now I say again, let us pass. The Zorli ships moved to surround the human fleet, attempting to block their path physically. Samantha ordered her ships to hold position. For several tense hours, the standoff continued, with neither side willing to escalate further. Finally, Samantha implemented her contingency plan. The human ships simultaneously activated a new drive system, one that allowed them to sidestep through a different dimensional plane for a few seconds. They simply phased through the Zorli blockade, reappearing on the other side. How? The Zorli commander began, but Samantha cut the transmission. The entire encounter was recorded by automated beacons in the Alpha Centauri system. Within days, the footage spread across every inhabited world. The message was clear. Humanity had developed defensive capabilities that rendered conventional weapons useless, yet had chosen not to use this advantage for conquest. The demonstration sent shockwaves through the galaxy. The remaining council members held an emergency session, with some advocating for reconciliation with Earth, while others demanded military action before humans grew too powerful. We must strike now, before they perfect these technologies further, the Zorli representative argued, pounding his fist on the ancient speaking table. And how do you propose we do that? Asked the Drasan ambassador calmly. You just witnessed their defensive capabilities. Any attack would be futile. Then we must find other ways to contain them, the Zorli insisted. Economic isolation, biological warfare, enough. The voice came from an unexpected source, a junior representative of the Tellurian Empire. For 20 years we have tried to maintain the fiction that humans need the Council. The evidence suggests the opposite is true. The Council is dying, while humanity thrives. Silence fell over the chamber as the words hung in the air. One by one, representatives began to leave their seats. No vote was taken, no formal declaration made, but by the session's end, 4 more species had announced their withdrawal from the Council. Meanwhile, the humanitarian fleet reached Lyra 7th. The devastated planet's surface was scarred by war and environmental collapse. As the ships entered orbit, thousands of survivors gathered to watch them arrive, their faces turned upward with something that had been absent for too long: hope. On the Horizons Bridge, Commander Carter received a priority transmission from Earth. It was from President Franklin, now serving her final term. "The Zorlai are making preparations for a major military campaign," the president said without preamble. "Intelligence suggests they're targeting our technology directly. They're afraid, Samantha, and desperate." Samantha nodded. "What are our orders?" "Continue the humanitarian mission. Show the galaxy what humanity stands for." Franklin's expression was resolute. "But be prepared. The Zorlai will not accept their diminished status quietly. Before this is over, they'll force us to demonstrate more than just our shields." As the first human aid workers set foot on Lyra 7th, they were greeted with something unexpected, not just gratitude but ceremonial welcome rituals typically reserved for honored allies. The local leaders had made a decision. They wanted more than just aid. They wanted protection, partnership, and a place in whatever new galactic order humanity was building. Across dozens of worlds, similar decisions were being made. The Council was crumbling, but from its ruins something new was emerging, something shaped by human principles but embraced by species across the stars. 50 years had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. The grand crystal dome on Alpha Centauri, once the proud center of galactic governance, now stood as a museum, a reminder of a failed experiment in interstellar cooperation. Kevin, Richard's grandson of one of Earth's original ambassadors, walked through the empty council chamber. At 38, he had never known the galaxy under council rule. His entire life had been shaped by the consequences of humanity's departure and the new order that followed. "It's smaller than I expected," he said to his guide, an Ardani historian who maintained the facility. "Most visitors say that," the Ardani replied, her willowy form gliding beside him. "Power often seems larger in our imaginations than in reality." Kevin ran his hand along the speaking table where, half a century earlier, Ethan Collins had announced humanity's withdrawal. The moment that changed everything. The polished stone felt cool under his fingers, as if time itself had frozen here, while the rest of the galaxy moved forward. Outside the museum, Kevin boarded a shuttle to the New Horizon, Earth's diplomatic vessel now in orbit around Alpha Centauri. Unlike the old council chamber, the New Horizon was designed to reflect a different philosophy: open spaces, transparent viewports, meeting rooms arranged in circles rather than hierarchies. Representatives from 37 species had gathered aboard the vessel. Once bitter enemies, species like the Vorga and Tellurians now sat side by side. Former council powers like the Drasin participated on equal footing with younger spacefaring races, and most surprisingly of all, a delegation from the Zorlai Imperium, or what remained of it, waited nervously at the edge of the assembly. The Zorlai had fought the hardest against the new order. Their desperate military campaigns to reassert dominance had depleted their resources and fractured their empire. Only 10 years ago, they had finally admitted defeat after their last attempt to strike at Earth had been neutralized without a single casualty on either side. Kevin took his place at the center of the assembly. As Earth's chief diplomat, he had spent the last 5 years working toward this moment, the formalization of what many were calling the Galactic Cooperative. Friends, colleagues, honored representatives, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. 50 years ago, humanity left the Galactic Council because we believed a better way was possible. Today we gather not to create a new council or to establish a new hierarchy, but to recognize what has already taken root across our worlds. A cooperative based on mutual respect and genuine self-determination. Murmurs of approval rippled through the assembly. Many of these representatives had lived through the tumultuous decades following the Council's collapse. They had seen how humanity's principles, offered freely but never imposed, had provided a foundation for a different kind of interstellar community. The charter before you is not Earth's creation alone, Kevin continued. Each of your worlds has contributed to its development. We believe it captures the spirit of what we have been building together. An alliance that respects our differences while celebrating our common desire for peace, discovery, and growth. The Zorlai representative, a younger member of his species, stepped forward. His scales were dull compared to the vibrant colors Kevin had seen in historical recordings of Zaxthul. The Zorlai wished to speak, he said, his voice carrying a humble tone that would have been unthinkable in the Council era. Kevin nodded. The Assembly recognizes the Zorlai representative. For decades, we fought against the changes humanity brought to our galaxy, the Zorlai began. We believed in the old order, in the rightful dominance of elder races over younger ones. We saw humans as upstarts who needed to be contained. He paused, his inner eyelids blinking rapidly in what humans now understood as a gesture of deep emotion. We were wrong. Our campaigns to reassert control failed not because your weapons were stronger, but because your ideas were better. Your willingness to help even those who once opposed you, to share technology rather than hoard it, to respect developing worlds rather than exploit them. These principles won allies where our threats could not. The Zorlai bowed his head. Today, officially and without reservation, the Zorlai apologize for our actions, both during the Council era and after. We ask to join your cooperative not as leaders but as partners, ready to learn a better way forward. A hush fell over the assembly. This moment, the Zorlai humbling themselves before the very species they had once dismissed, seemed to mark the final transformation of the old order. Kevin stepped forward and extended his hand in the human gesture of friendship. After a moment's hesitation, the Zorlai extended his upper limb to complete the gesture. The cooperative welcomes the Zorlai, Kevin said simply. The past informs us, but it need not define our future. As the formal proceedings continued, Kevin's attention was drawn to a small delegation that had just arrived. They were not from any established spacefaring civilization, but were natives of Proxima Centauri IV, the world whose exploitation had triggered humanity's departure from the Council 50 years earlier. Under the careful guidance of human and Ardani observers, these people had developed their society at their own pace. They had not been forced into the galactic community before they were ready. Instead, they had been protected while they developed their own space program and made their own decisions about their place among the stars. Their representative, using translation technology developed by Dr. Susan Bennett, addressed the assembly. "We come not as supplicants but as equals," the translator conveyed. "Our world was once nearly destroyed by those who saw us as resources to be harvested. Instead, we found protectors who asked for nothing in return. We have studied your histories, both the dark chapters and the bright ones. We choose to add our voice to this cooperative because it is built on principles we share." As the proceedings moved toward their conclusion, Kevin found himself thinking about his grandfather's stories of those early, difficult days after leaving the Council. How uncertain the future had seemed. How alone humanity had felt. Now, representatives from 37 species prepared to sign the cooperative charter. Not because Earth had conquered them or forced them into compliance, but because humanity had offered an alternative vision of how spacefaring civilizations could interact. The signing ceremony began. One by one, representatives approached the central table to place their mark on the document. Some used traditional ink, others biological signatures, a few energy imprints. Each method was respected as equally valid. When Kevin's turn came, he paused briefly before signing. The ink pen in his hand was a family heirloom, the same one Ethan Collins had used to draft humanity's withdrawal from the Council 50 years earlier. As he signed Earth's name to the charter, Kevin reflected on the irony. Humanity had not set out to reshape the galaxy. They had simply refused to participate in a system that violated their core principles. In walking away, they had shown others that alternatives were possible. The old Council had crumbled, but from its ruins, something stronger had emerged, not a structure imposed from above, but a community built through countless individual choices to cooperate rather than dominate. As the ceremony concluded, representatives mingled freely across species lines. Ancient enemies exchanged ideas. Young civilizations were welcomed as equals. And at the center of it all, humanity stood not as conquerors or rulers, but as the species that had dared to walk away from power in order to find something better. The stars outside the viewport seemed brighter somehow. A new chapter in galactic history had begun,